There's been enough done to this area of the car that I've decided to divide into 3 separate parts. The work has also spread over many months, so I just wanted to keep it all together. This will be part 1 of this 3-part miniseries, before I knew about my motor problems and before we had bought any more parts. On the day of Christmas, I got some sweet parts that I probably could not afford on my own. Thanks, Santa. My dad decided we should figure out or decode the components of the car that we have access to, since that didn't really cost anything except time. I was still having nightmares about decoding the VIN, so I guess I should be happy to add some new monsters to torment me. Let's just say I was not super excited to decode something else. I'm kind of joking. I do want to learn more about this car, and cars in general, so I went along with it. We started by jacking up the car. My dad had told me that there were stampings facing the front of the car on the right axle tube. That would identify what axle ratio we had. So we went about looking for stampings. First we tried to use a rag to wipe it off and see if we could see any markings. Unfortunately, that did not work. Fail. Next we tried using a piece of metal that was lying around in the shop to scrape off the years of road grime and probably 40-year-old undercoating from the car's axle tube. That also did not work. Fail. That's when we got out the big guns. We decided to use a right angle grinder with a wire brush head on it, and basically wire brush off anything that wasn't metal on the rear end. That actually worked. And we got the stamping exposed. GM axle stamps are coded as to what the differential ratio is, or how many times the pinion, which rotates in the same direction as the motor, turns to the ring gear, which rotates at a right angle to the motor in the direction of the tires. My dad said the higher the number, the quicker the car takes off from a stop. But this also lowers the top speed of the car since the engine can only turn so fast. My dad said we were hoping for a 3.42 posi-traction differential, which was offered in 1979. After we had exposed the markings, we saw 2PJ G322, a weird character that looked like an 8 and had a tail, and then after that there was a 1. As far as I know, all second generation F-bodies came with GM's 10-bolt 8.5-inch ring gear in the rear end. All of the axle stampings were organized in a certain way. However, when you look on the internet sometimes, they are not in order, and just stamped kind of randomly on the axle tube. My axle did not have a limited slip tag. My dad said this was disappointing, meaning it was probably an open axle. But since this is an actual Trans Am, we were holding out of hope that it had a limited slip, or what Pontiac calls a true track rear end. Decoding the rear end, first we see a 2PJ. The 2 is coded for Pontiac, and PJ is coded for a 2.41 ratio. The next letter is G, which means that the axle was produced at the Chevrolet axle plant. The next numbers are 322. This is something called a Julian date code. That means the axle was made on the 322nd day of the year. I have no idea what that character that looks like an 8 with a tail is. Maybe somebody watching this video knows and can tell me in the comments. Then the number 1 means that the axle was manufactured on day shift. I had partially destroyed the build sheet that I took from under the car's gas tank. On the sheet it said 2PU, which would be a 2.73 posi-track differential. But at this point it looked like I had the 2.41 open differential. The inconsistency of the information stamped on the axle tube and what was shown on the building sheet was driving my dad crazy. So crazy that he actually took it all apart before putting out this video. So I know, and he knows the truth. And you will see exactly what is hiding inside the differential housing in part 3 of this miniseries about this area of the car. I have done a lot of stuff on the car that hasn't made it into YouTube yet. But I promise, it's coming soon.
So, I'm going to turn this wheel 2 times and you count the number of times that thing goes around. Okay?
Okay.
So there's
1, yeah. And then 2.
2. Keep going. So 2 1/4. 2 1/2. That's it. So that turned 2 1/2 times for every 2 times this turned. That's it. So stop.
So make sure you subscribe, and I'll see you later.